Hello and welcome to Identirati Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue, and today is episode 53, ID Transformer, Okta to Ping in 45 days. And our guest today is Steve Giovanetti, CTO and co-founder of Hub City Media. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Mike, how are you? Glad to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Giovanetti. I'm the CTO and founder of Hub City Media, and been in the identity space kind of very early on. Haven't worked much in the standard space, but have been working with clients on doing implementations all the way back to like 2001 timeframe. Company was founded in '99. 2001, we kind of started doing identity. Started off with a little company called Waveset, which then got purchased by Sun. Did a lot of early Sun Netscape and Sun related deployments. Became an Oracle partner. Also did a lot of deployments for them. About 14 years ago, we formed a relationship with ForgeRock. About 2 years ago, we started our ping practice, and then we were kind of merged together by Thoma Bravo. So they kind of screwed up our diversification strategy. But in any case, they put us in very good position to move forward with Ping. And today we're a proud Ping elite partner. We do other kinds of work as well. But primarily our number one partner is Ping. And we do a lot of both the legacy ForgeRock side and the legacy Ping and technologies and have lots of engagements under our belts. I think we've done about 1,000 implementations since about 2006. It's a
That's
lot.
It? Just 1,000.
Yeah, just 1,000, man. Yeah, no, but it's been a great ride, and pretty excited to be here to talk about ID Transformer.
And why is it Hub City? Where is these automobile hubs,
okay.
or is this
So,
a hub of like?
So here's the thing. So when I started the company, in the middle or towards the beginning of 1999, that was still a bit frothy, the .com era, So I've kind of been living in Central Jersey for all my life, and I live near the city of New Brunswick, so that's known as the Hub City. And then at the time, friends of mine who were starting companies, they were agency this and media that. So we were doing a lot of internet stuff then before the bubble burst. And so I decided Hub City was taken. I think it was a network systems provider in Tennessee. So I said, hey, let's tack on media, Hub City Media. Then when we started doing identity, we thought about changing the name of the company, but we never got around to it. So I think we're stuck with this because we're not changing the name of the company at this point.
I love the name.
Yeah,
Ramses, you're practice manager also at Hub City Media. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your background before we dive into the topic at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And hello, everyone. My name is Ramses Moya. I'm one of the Ping practice managers at Hub City. Actually, ending up here is kind of like a little bit of full circle for me with Geo. I actually started doing security. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada, and so I started doing security for the security establishment here, working for the government. Various agencies doing security for the federal government, doing penetration testing for different ministries, as well as Human Rights Commission and the Privy Office and things of that sort. And then I ended up on Netscape, and so Netscape is relevant because the LDAP server, as we know it today, in Ping, came.
This must have been some time ago.
It was a couple of hot minutes, Because
then it became iPlanet, right? When it combined.
Yeah,
so most people don't even remember iPlanet, let alone Netscape.
I was about to say, I got one job, and the logo of my paycheck just kept on changing. It was Netscape, and then it was Time Warners, and then it was AOL Time Warners, and it was iPlanet, and then Sun. And during the Sun Microsystems, once Waveset was acquired, that's actually the first time that I got to meet Geo many years ago. Yeah. We brought Geo into Canada to do a number of implementations, and had heard the wonderful things about Hub City Media, and I did go somewhere else after my Sun Microsystems. tenure, but knowing and always present on the uh, essentially the good work that Hub City has always done. I had to find my way back into Hub City and start the ping practice before Thomas Bravo merged Ford Truck and Ping.
Yeah.
And I have to make a quick pitch. You guys mentioned Waveset a couple of times. The audience might not remember Waveset or know the history,
No.
but a great Austin company that
That's right.
the skeleton of which sort of became SailPoint, I would say.
Yeah.
Still one of Austin's greatest companies of all time and still going strong. So we're quite proud of that. Well, let's pivot into the topic at hand because
Sure.
I sort of love this topic.
Yeah.
And, so just to level set, maybe what we could do is talk about migrations in general before we go into the specific. How long does it normally take an enterprise to migrate? Let's forget about moving from one vendor to another. I know you've done a lot of ForgeRock migrations. How long would you normally advise a client it might take to go from one version of ForgeRock to, let's say, a significantly upgraded version of ForgeRock itself, just to do a version to version upgrade at a customer? Because 45 days for that might even be fast, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, when we even just if you're staying within the same vendor, right, moving from one version to the next, usually is usually pretty easily done, right? But when you're talking about minor versions, but every so often customers don't keep up with the every version cycle that the vendor comes out with, right? So if you look at kind of our history, right, the last 14 years, say 12 years as a ForgeRock partner or involved with ForgeRock technology, there's been kind of two major breaks in terms of, where the upgrade was pretty tough. So that would be maybe in the 5.5 version to 6 and 6.5. So that was one, actually it's really one break there. And then the other break was 6.5 to the 7 series, right? Which is where we kind of are now.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is meaningless in the cloud, so to speak, because once you're in the cloud, then, there's the upgrades just happen. You're not faced with that anymore, but at least there are still a ton of on-prem customers, right? So we are, so that, from there, from those kind of upgrades, though, you're talking many months, right? It depends. Like a 6.5 to 7.3 upgrade is tough. Now we've done a bunch, so we can do them quicker manually, 4, 5, 6 months you're talking about minimum, depending on what the customer's implemented. Sometimes customers say, hey, we've been deploying on VMs. We want to go to Kubernetes. So there's a technology shift there. We either encourage or discourage that depending on the maturity of the organization, because there's nothing scarier than inheriting a whole mess of containers that run your identity platform if you can't spell Kubernetes. So we try to, put the right foot forward for the customer if they're on-prem, because they're eventually going to have to manage it. If they don't want to manage it, they can always hire us to manage it. That's another thing we do, is we actually do manage, customer environments. But those are long upgrades. Those are very long upgrades, and that's why we put together Transformer, really.
I just want to give you, so today I was on a conference call with one of our enterprise customers, and they're moving from Glue 4 to Flex. So in the Glue product world, this is a pretty major upgrade in that there's some class path changes, the configuration layer changed. And so I just want to tell you the time frame that they told me. They said that they plan to have a discovery phase for 5 months in 2025. So from January of 2025 to May of 2025, they're just going to sort of look at it. And then in the summer of 2025, they're going to build a test environment to better understand and confirm the migration process. Then they plan to actually roll out Glue Flex to a new market because one of the things that sometimes is like this customer has multiple markets throughout the world.
Yeah.
And then once they understand what that looks like, they're going to go back and look to migrate their existing Glue Core environments to Glue Flex. And I said, to be honest, I said that sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Well,
It's
yeah, I
an
mean,
entire it's an
that's
entire industry, right? Migration is an entire industry onto its own. Like
yeah.
it can take an organization a significant amount of not only effort and activity, but a significant amount of thought and planning just to get it done in a way that is seamless.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gio, I interrupted you.
No, that I mean, a lot of times when we talk to customers, like they don't want to wait, right? There's usually, well, I got to move because I want to roll out some new technology or new feature, right? Or I want to go because my platform is really old and rickety. I'm having problems. I really need to get to the next version, or my old platform has too many vulnerabilities baked into it, right? Because if anybody knows, you have 5-year-old, 4-year-old software, there's bound to be
I say an inexorable stream of CVEs that have accumulated.
Exactly, right. So they're like, hey, I got to do something. So we normally, boy, I would love to talk to a customer that was kind of thinking of it in sort of a long-term play like that. We don't often get the luxury of those kind of timelines. So it's good that they're thinking about it that way. But like a lot of times we just don't get that luxury. And of course,
Right.
there's usually a sale in the balance, right? Some vendor wants, is bringing us in to look at the migration as a project, and they got a license sale on the line. They want to kind of do it quick and efficiently, and the customer really is looking at it also from sort of a total cost of ownership. Okay, for me to get on this new platform, I might have some licensing deltas, but what's it going to cost me to get there, because that's my total cost. So the more efficient we can make that migration, the better.
Not only that, but there's also like a cadence associated to the project that a lot of the times the customers, they feel like they lose, right? The project, starts and there's a significant amount of priority and a lot of attention brought into the project, and there's a significant amount of needs. And once the migration, and particularly the planning, takes a significant amount of time, that sense of priority and that sense of cadence and velocity that the customer was looking for, it kind of starts diminishing. So the longer the migration takes, I find that the end goal of the customer a lot of the times is just having both systems up and running. A lot of the time I've seen and I've experienced customers that sometimes they paint themselves into a corner where they will have to run both systems, and they'll bite on the licensing cost and the effort to run both systems for much longer period of time that they really wanted to, because they lost that velocity, they lost their resources, they lost that for that migration.
Paying double is a big
I just wanted to introduce the risk equation of this. What I see with a lot of migrations, like recently we did a ForgeRock to Glue migration, and the customer's perspective was, we want to do the migration, but we don't want to change a lot of other things. We want to de-risk the other changes while we do this migration. And then once we've done the migration, start picking off, upgrades. Like the cloud one is tough. I'll put that one on the side. But let's say, actually there's been a lot of innovation in the industry, and now we have better ways to do things than we used to.
Yeah.
There are new endpoints and new flows in OAuth and OpenID. And so being a optimistic technologist, I'm always like, oh, and now we can go back and fix this thing, or we can improve this weird thing. But a lot of customers see these migrations as very risky, and they're in the process of these migrations, they're worried about changing too many things at once.
Yeah. A lot of times we run into customers and say, hey, let's just constrain the scope to like for like. Right. So I had one customer that was going from, let's say, I think it was 6.5 ForgeRock to 7, and they were in their authentication flows were all built in chains, right? Which is kind of an older orchestration. I mean, it's not really orchestration, but it's orchestration. It's like low level orchestration. Now they have, what they call intelligent auth, their user journeys, very much like, DaVinci in terms of its capabilities to be able to, have arbitrary flows and very flexible, very powerful. Customer deferred that work until after the migration, right? Because they just wanted to push everything like for like. And you could do that as long as the features, your deployment isn't as old, and we have, that the feature's still there in the new version. And we have some of that when we go between vendors. So like say Okta to Ping, right? There's some delta in the functionality that we're having to do. So we implement it a different way in Ping, or we take advantage of a feature set in Ping, whether it be AIC or Ping 1, and we basically kind of adapt. Okay, you're using this feature over here. We're going to implement that over here in DaVinci, or in another mechanism in the platform. So in some cases, we can't defer those changes. We've got to, figure it out because we're losing that functionality. This platform either has it in a different form, so we have to do something like that.
Right. And I was going to bring that up in the ForgeRock to Glue migration. ForgeRock sort of was like a web access management platform, designed as a web access management platform, and there were some mismatches when going to sort of a true federation based platform, and we had to do some weird things to make Glue look like ForgeRock, but Glue's very flexible. But we had to do some go through some hoops just to keep the behavior the same, so we didn't impact the applications.
Yeah.
Because their thought is we don't want to have to redo all these applications that are expecting ForgeRock to be there. We want them to all not notice the difference and maybe just change the host name or something.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many systems out there, like when we've done migrations to, let's say, from Oracle to another platform where, we've had to maintain like old Oracle headers so the application kept working. So it's like, that kind of technique is just something we have to do just to keep the lights on, and then hopefully the application developers can then adapt to, protocols, away from kind of, depending on a reverse proxy, do identity the right way, the authentication at least anyway, the right way. So yeah, those are all challenges we face, almost on every project.
Yeah. So right here, I'm probably going to lose my chance of ever getting an Okta sponsorship for this live stream. So,
Sorry.
Goodbye, Okta sponsorship. But my question is, why would a customer ever want to migrate from Okta to Ping? Okta's pretty good.
It's good. It's good.
And my follow-up question is, I don't know what Ping means anymore. Are you talking about Ping Federate? Are you talking about Ping 1? Are you talking about ForgeRock Access Manager, which I guess is also a Ping product?
Yeah.
So I don't know who wants to take that one, Ramsey or Steve.
Let me start it.
Go ahead, Ramses.
I think the three of us have dated ourselves, quite well, and by the means of dating ourselves, we know that customers a lot of the times they don't necessarily need to migrate away from something. A lot of the customers migrate towards something, and so the nature of migration is one of those where it's not that one platform perhaps was inefficient, or it was more costly, or it didn't satisfy the needs, or there wasn't a certain feature that was supported. Sometimes it's just a combination of all of those, and it's just the evolution of technology and moving to a vendor that is adding certain things. And sometimes it's a competition. Sometimes it goes back and forth, and some vendors come in and they take the leadership, and then they disappear a couple of decades later, which to the three of us is a hot minute. So it's migration away from from Okta. It's more Ping is kind of like the new kid on the block when it comes to public IDaaS. In this case, we're talking specifically to Ping 1 as the public multi-tenant IDaaS version. And so they have some cool features that customers are gravitating to, and we saw an opportunity for us to. I used to do a lot of.
So what are those cool features? I actually I'm kind of curious because we have a lot of guests from Okta on the live stream. Actually,
absolutely, absolutely.
I'm sort of curious. I don't know that much about Ping 1, to be honest. I'm curious what if you could maybe mention what are some of those features that people love about Ping One?
So a lot of the migrations that we're seeing, a lot of the customers who have an interest towards Ping, they have a lot of use cases that incorporate a significant amount of logic as part of their login process, as part of their verification process. A lot of the
So
times,
login journeys or login workflows.
that being
Yeah.
cheap,
It's easier to use DaVinci to
yes,
build these very custom login flows
it is.
rather
Pretty
than
much, yeah.
use something whatever Okta's offering, which is maybe more out of the box.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. The amount of, in fact, going back to the previous statement that you had with respect to, a lot of our migrations, we try to separate it into a one-to-one migration, and so that happens, fairly quickly. And then as we separate any new features or any add-ons that the customer is looking for, but they're normally like really tied up, right after the migration. And so DaVinci is the big one. Is the one where customers are looking for just-in-time migration or just-in-time provisioning to external services with a certain amount of logic and adaptive MFA associated to it. So that would be one. And then the second big one is there's a lot of customers who are looking for a tenant that perhaps doesn't limit. Doesn't have rate limits associated to the tenant itself, right? So they're looking for more performance, higher volumes, and so Ping offers that as well.
Yeah, and from a business perspective, like our customers, like they give us reasons. Like we don't force them, right? They come to us sometimes and they say, "Hey, I got a customer that's looking to get off of, this might be saying we're working with the Ping sales team, right? We have a customer that wants, they're on Okta, they're not happy. Well, okay, but there's a lot of reasons why you could be happy, right? You could not be happy. Some of them are economic, like they don't like that their bill going up and doesn't seem to be an end to it. The rate limits are a factor. We hear sometimes they're expressing concerns about the security breaches that happened a little while ago. And like, look, we're not basically selling against it. What we saw is there's this market opportunity there. And by the way, it's not restricted to Okta either, right? There's some other things we could talk about here that are ping to ping, which is another whole thing, right? Because But there are definitely reasons that a customer sometimes just fatigue. Like if you go to any vendor, any customer, after a while, sometimes they got vendor fatigue and they see something else in another platform and are like, that looks better. I did a call with a customer where they were looking at identity governance, and they looked at what was available in Ping Identity. Advanced Identity Cloud, which is essentially the ForgeRock cloud platform. The IGA components there, and they looked at it and they say, "Man, that's so much easier than SailPoint." So they're interested in kind of taking on that platform. So it's a lot of times just like this is what they know. They're not necessarily happy for whatever reason, economic features, the length of time to implement, whatever, and they just essentially want to go to a different platform. And it's not to pick on Okta. It just happens with everybody, right? It's like there's a change in leadership. There's a change in whatever, business requirements. Hey, I gotta do something that I can't do with Okta, or I gotta do something that Okta's going to charge me a lot more for an add-on, or another vendor is going to charge me for an add-on. It's baked into your platform. Let's go ahead and do it with you guys. It's all baked in. So.
Or I have an older Ping One, environment.
Yeah.
That's it. So even
with sometimes
Ping,
it's like I got an old platform and it's going to cost me a lot to upgrade. Why don't I just go to a different vendor? There's lots of reasons.
I think the act of migration is not necessarily a vote on a disagreement on the system that you're leaving behind. It doesn't. It could. It absolutely could. It could absolutely voice a sentiment, a negative sentiment towards, I'm moving away from something. But I think the act of migration is I've always seen it as the customer always seeking for something new. There's a new feature, there's a new capability that they're looking to add. And so the act of migration is
simplification, migration to cloud. That's also another big one. And that's what ID Transformer we've been doing mostly is cloud to cloud or on-prem to cloud.
Right. And then that's sort of why I asked, because obviously I have been seeing a lot of, let's say, self-hosted to SaaS type migrations.
Yeah,
Because who really wants to operate? It's a pain in the neck to operate.
it is.
So
It is. I mean, we have a whole
I'm on
team that
board
does it.
with.
Well,
We have a
I,
we have a whole team that does it. So
we did have a pretty large, shipping company in the U.S. that, had everything on, on Okta on the cloud, and their very specific use case scenario was the opposite. There was like 2,000 applications that they needed to, and it was machine to machine, and they just needed to bring it from cloud to on-prem. And their use case was very simple. We lost internet connectivity, and had nothing to do with Okta. Okta was great, but we lost internet twice, and that affected us. So we needed to bring them on. So it does happen. You do run into this very very niche type of use cases from time to time.
I actually joke that some of Glue's customers, I call them too big for Okta, where Okta is just getting in the way. Like Okta's fine, but their own IT department is more responsive to them than Okta is. And they say, why are we paying these guys all this money when we have our own IT economies of scale, and we would get a better SLA from our own team than from Okta, and they wouldn't hassle us about getting an export of the data. So I agree that most of the migration is from, let's say, self-hosted to hosted, but I am seeing the pendulum slip back a little bit, where we're seeing some customers are like, well, we tried this cloud thing, and you know what? Actually, we want more control, or we want more, who knows? Like you said, it's
Mike, like another factor, FedRAMP, right? Not every vendor has a FedRAMP capable solution, right? Ping is starting to deliver FedRAMP now, and has had FedRAMP in the past for certain products. But like when a customer comes at us with a FedRAMP requirement and they want to run, let's say, a certain, let's say, ForgeRock technology, well, that's not FedRAMP yet. Or actually, I should say there are FedRAMP versions of that now. But prior to that, they would literally be looking to bring it in-house because they're already running a FedRAMP environment internally. So it's easier for them to host internally than it is to depend on an outside vendor to host it for them. So that's another scenario we see every so often, is the FedRAMP requirement comes in. It's getting less and less every year now with the vendors actually deploying or having FedRAMP solutions available. But that's another one that's a tricky one to navigate.
I'll give you another example, which was actually quite interesting. A global customer in the financial services. They have a cloud tenant in the US. They have a cloud tenant in EMEA, the Gulf and Middle East. But when it came to Asia Pacific, there was one very specific country that they needed to make sure that it was covered. And the regionalities wasn't available for that country. So they decided to not go cloud and go on-prem.
For data sovereignty reasons, you mean?
It was actually so the specific country was Japan, and their use case scenario is if a natural disaster occurs and Japan becomes disconnected from the internet,
right?
Can I have the cloud running within Japan? Is there a sale within Japan? And the answer was no. It says, well, since there isn't one, then I have to go on-prem.
In their own data center, basically.
Well, let's pivot towards the topic at hand. I actually want to show the diagram now. And so this is it. I love the use of Terraform here. We're big fans of Terraform also. But maybe you could just walk us through. Sure. And by the way, 45 days, it sounds really fast. For all the reasons we laid out above, how a company might not actually want to do it in 45 days. But it sounds like whatever your process is for this migration, at least this part of the migration is going to be constrained to a certain amount of time. So maybe you can walk us through this.
This doesn't even take hours to do, this pipeline to run. It depends on the size of the environment, but most of the time we could run these things like in half a day and a lot of the migration's done. But in any case, this is kind of the architecture that Ramses's team has kind of built out here. So we have Okta on one side, or whatever vendor, not to pick on Okta, but whatever vendor, and then we have this kind of extraction technology, and we kind of leverage Terraformer. So we've actually done some tweaks to Terraformer, adding different endpoints or adding different capabilities, because Terraformer essentially depends on a Terraform provider. So in this case, we use actually the Okta Terraform provider with Terraformer, and then we run an extract phase, and that gives us basically all the configurations the customer has in a set of Terraform files. So we have it, kind of nice vendor neutral way to define all the configuration in the source platform. Then we have this piece in the middle, which is our transformer. So we'll take that Okta Terraform, those Okta Terraform modules, and then we'll transform them into something that's suitable for Ping 1. So all of these systems have essentially, they're implementing the same features. They're just calling them different, right? They essentially, an Okta stanza to configure, say, like a SAML, SP on the IDP side doesn't look exactly like everything on the Ping 1 side, but using Terraform, we get at least a common language that they're defined in, and it's just a matter of maybe doing a little bit of transformation to the Terraform. So then once we do that transformation, we now have a set of Terraform files that are compatible with Ping 1, and we just push them into Ping 1. So that's the simplicity of this pipeline, right? And as long as there's an analogous feature on both sides, there's just a little bit of syntactical difference between the Terraform definition, and we accommodate that with some of our coding, and then we get the configuration moved over. It's that simple. Now, the one other thing we do is we can run this tool as an evaluation tool. So we don't have to just run this to do a migration. We actually run half of this pipeline, and that's kind of represented by the little arrow pointing down at this migration assessment report. So the other thing that Ramses and his team has done is we kind of realized early, if we just point this at the customer environment, we can extract the configuration, and then we can actually tell them what percentage of the configuration we can actually move automatically, and what pieces might have to be done, kind of manually. So
this is sort of analogous to what I was talking about as the discovery phase, where you sort of look at your configuration and then sort of analyze it and think about it. Yeah.
Right, and think about how we would do that, without this tool, right? We'd sit there, we kind of, maybe we'd get an extract from the Okta system or whatever the target or the source system would be. Worst case scenario, we have to drill through a lot of screens to see how things are configured, depending on how the customer actually did the configuration. We might be looking at, wherever the database is, extracting LDIFs or extracting database configuration from wherever the tool is actually storing configuration. Then we'd be going through this manually. Well, with Transformer, what we did is we basically run half of the pipeline. We dump all the data. We actually run analysis on that dump data. And then we come up with a migration assessment report that tells the customer, okay, here's what we can migrate manually. Here's what here's what we have to migrate manually. Here's what we do automated. And here's how long we think it's going to take. So we actually create the migration estimate just by running that. And a lot of customers have been taking us up on the offer. We do it for free. It takes about an hour. We just get on the phone with the customer. They issue us a token. Once we're done running the tool, they basically can revoke the token, and we just extract the information that we need just to do the assessment. And then a couple of days later, we come back with a formal proposal and we give it to them. And it's been a really interesting reaction that we've seen. People their eyebrows, wow, it's going to take that long. And in terms of the amount of time that we think it's going to take is pretty low. And 45 days is not uncommon as a metric.
Let me give you a sense, Mike.
Yeah, go.
We have a customer, and the we made the assessment, and they were very excited about doing the migration, and we started the project on a Monday, had the kickoff on a Monday. On a Tuesday, we had a RAD session, and this customer financial organization into the millions of users, and they had 4 Okta tenants. They have 4 properties, and so each one of the properties had a different Okta tenant for branding purposes. And by Wednesday, I had the 4 Okta tenants migrated into their dev environment. And so, all the applications, all the policies, all the external IDPs, absolutely, all the groups created. In the case of non-production, I migrated all the users. And so by the time Wednesday hits, the customer takes a look at the environment and say, okay, well, I can now see we're already late. So there are a handful of manual activities that need to happen, and one of them, which is the big one, is the customer making changes onto the applications. They have to go into each one of the applications as an SP and make changes to those apps. And as Gio noted, one of the beautiful things about the tool is at the end of the migration process, we actually give the customer a PDF file saying, here is a list of every single one of your applications with a copy and paste of every single one of the attributes you must change in your application for you to be able to then have it repointed over to Penguin.
Yep.
Do you think Okta, because Okta is maybe a little more constrained, that it makes it easier to do a mapping from Okta to another platform?
No, I don't think so.
So.
There's a couple of things that I think every vendor and every platform has its quirks. Okta, there's certain elements out of the Okta configuration that are not exposed through Terraformer. I'll give you an example, which is the Okta catalog applications, the OIN applications, right? And so if the customer has, a number of catalog applications, unfortunately, those need to be done manually on the target migration. In the case of Ping One, it's easy because they also have a catalog, so it's kind of like a from catalog to catalog. So you're basically following a wizard for all intents and purposes. But we haven't found outside of that one an external integrations, say integrating AD or integrating Microsoft 365. Outside of those types of integration, we haven't found anything that cannot be migrated from either Okta or Auth0 or an older version of Ping over to a Ping One platform.
So I think you kind of alluded to this, but can you use this for other versions? Let's say from other versions or vendors that are not Okta to basically, can you go from, and how much work is there involved in doing a new mapping from, let's say you wanted to do ForgeRock to Glue. We have a lot of demand for that at Glue. So let's say you wanted to do a ForgeRock to Glue transformer. How long would that take you to build something like that?
So we're obviously trying to target applications or platforms that are already Terraform, enabled. So and Terraform, because it's a lot easier. It's a standard. We're able to get the configuration as code in JSON, and we're kind of able to deal with that piece, very easily.
Oh no, we lost Steve. But that's okay. We keep going here on Identity Office Hours. That's fine.
Not an issue. So that piece is easy.
And just for our audience who might not know, I was talking to a customer today, and I was explaining to them you could think of Terraform almost as like a type of config API in a way.
Yeah,
like I tell people, we have a config API, we have a command line API, we have a web interface, we have a text UI, and we have Terraform. And I sort of look at the amount of things you can do in Terraform is quite powerful. For example, in Glue Flex, you can add an OpenID client through Terraform, or you can do these sort of configuration things, not just, people think of Terraform as, maybe just a cloud tool, but it's really more than that. Maybe you could just I don't know how much our audience knows about, maybe you could just give a quick background about Terraform itself.
Absolutely. So Terraform, it really did start as a cloud, type of, base tool where you were able to do configuration as code. And so that way you would be able to check your configuration into a repo, and then be able to write code for you to be able to then have a baseline configuration or a server profile of your services, and then be able to push them into multiple environments. From that perspective, there's a lot of public, IDaaS, customers who are not using Terraform, which is unfortunate. I do have a number of customers who are using Terraform to configure their production environment. So no one is allowed into production. There's no admins into production. Everything is managed through Terraform, and they're taking obviously the production environments as their baseline for that.
And that's, just to sidetrack for a second, because I find that super interesting. And I keep telling customers, you don't really want to use the admin UI and do any ad hoc configuration. We really want configuration as code and GitOps these days more than we want ad hoc configuration. So weirdly, I'm saying, like, we spend all this effort building the admin UI, and I'm really saying that's sort of for development now, when you need that type of like ad hoc. But Steve, welcome back. We took a little detour on Terraform just because our audience might not know, but Terraform is just so cool. And we love Terraform, Eric Glue.
We've been doing a lot of stuff with it. Obviously, it's integral to ID Transformer. We've also been building infrastructure now with it for years. So we even developed a kind of almost like a macro system on top of Terraform that allows us to design basically provide a specification of an environment for a customer deployment. And then we feed that spec to this tool that we call Forge. And then that generates all the Terraform code that you need depending on the cloud provider. So right now we support AWS, but we've ported some of it to Azure. So from one specification, we get essentially 3 identical environments all built out using Terraform. And then once you're done that process, you can go in and just manage things through the Terraform files. But yeah, Terraform's a tremendous tool. And if the listeners out there or folks viewing the stream don't know about it, definitely take a look at it. It's fantastic in terms of building out infrastructure, and it's been bleeding over into application configuration now consistently. There's a lot of applications you can configure with Terraform. You can build your own Terraform provider. It's a little bit arcane, I would say. But once you do, you have a tremendous capability at your fingertips to be able to consistently configure something and watch out for drift. I mean, it's just really a great tool.
Yeah, that's it. I was just about to mention even use cases that sometimes customers don't think about. They have a cloud provider. How do I make a backup of that cloud environment, right? Terraform. I can bring it into Terraform. I can check it into a repo. I can see how the drift on the configuration, has evolved. I may be able to push a configuration change that caused the problem. I'm able to revert back through Terraform. So a fantastic, useful tool that has proven pretty crucial when it comes to migrations as well.
Of course, here at Glue, we have a hosted version called Glue Solo, but we won't do any new deployments on any new self-hosted deployments on VMs. We're basically 100% cloud native because we just don't want any more of these like fragile VM-based production deployments. Anymore. We just don't want to support it. So we still have some customers using VMs we support in Glue 4, but if you're coming to us for a new prod deployment, self-hosted, we're only doing cloud native now. So
it's tough to push. Like I have a lot of issues sometimes. Just I go to an organization and they want to get a capability up and running. They want to do containers, but they've never done it before. That's a heavy lift.
Hard.
They want to do it so hard. You're like, you don't know what you're in for until you actually try to do it. And I mean, we started doing it like in 2016, and back then, forget about, there were new tools like every week. Every week there was a new tool, there was a new way to do things. It's somewhat stabilized now, but it's a lot to absorb for an organization. So
we're kind of recommending cloud, SaaS, like let somebody else do it. That's probably the best way to go. We are still deploying some customers on VMs, but we're doing that again using Terraform to build out the infrastructure, using Terraform as much as we can to lay down the applications
Sure.
and try to get the customer into that discipline, because that's understandable. At least that's not like a big technology shift. It's just how you build the technology. But Kubernetes is a heavy lift for organizations that don't know it. It's a lot.
And there aren't enough cloud engineers out there. So even if your
Nah.
organization wants to go cloud native, it can be very hard to actually build the sort of layers of like architect to, engineers to actually like pull it off. I'm
Yep.
very sympathetic to that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I also, we make money at Glue when customers don't have production outages.
Yep.
And
No, it's true.
and we don't have to
Absolutely
burn
true.
a ton of resources. And
Yeah.
so, believe it or not, we're now on the database side, we're saying no more production LDAP deployments. We're only doing RDBMS.
Wow.
In Couchbase in certain cases where we need multi-region sharded deployment. So we have a little niche for Couchbase, but we're really trying to push customers. In fact, we'll only support now databases, the RDBMS databases, and we really want customers to use like Amazon Aurora, because the number one cause of our outages was actually LDAP.
Yeah.
LDAP going down or LDAP performance
Replication
issues.
failing,
Yeah.
and especially LDAP and Kubernetes together, and various versions of Kubernetes, all sorts of issues. And we're just like, if we can take this database stuff off our plate and let Amazon and Google do it, we just eliminated the biggest reason why we get called and why we have outages.
LDAP, sorry, Mike, the Netscape in my heart bleeds
Hurts.
in
Yeah.
pieces. To hear that was the issue.
Well, it's being an old timer and dealing with LDAP and being very comfortable with it, and in a lot of cases doing a lot of advanced tuning on it. You do kind of look at it
Black
and say,
arts, actually. Not tuning, the black arts. Let's call it.
Yeah, it's the black arts, right? But once you understand that, you're like, okay, I can deploy this thing and I can make it bulletproof and things like that. But can the customer do that? That's always what we struggle. Is like, is the customer going to do this, or are they going to be constantly reaching out to the support organization or back to us saying, hey, this whole thing's like down again?
And they have
well,
400 RDBMS databases and one LDAP server for identity. So it's like, if you just say, okay, we'll use the RDBMS, they're like, okay, good. Well, we already have a whole team of people who do that. And so the incremental lift isn't that high. Anyway, it was a sad day, though, Ramsey.
It's almost
I'm
like
with
the
you on that.
Oracle guys. It's almost like Oracle knew what they were talking about when they built, like, I forget what the database LDAP that they had was called. Anyway, like
Oracle, no, not OVD, OID.
OID.
It was OID,
Internet Directory.
Oracle Internet Directory, right?
OID.
So it was basically like an LDAP interface on top of an Oracle database.
That was never a good idea, actually. Let's not go that far.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
I hated it because I was an LDAP guy, and I'm like, what the heck?
Let's talk about secure way, like put LDAP on top of DB2. Like, no, that wasn't a good idea either.
It's
no.
It goes back to Gio's comments
Yes.
on technical maturity as well. There's certain technology that is not necessarily easy for certain customers, depending on the skill sets that they acquired and they've hired and they've grown internally. It's easy for us because, like, one of my guys was the guy who wrote the LDAP performance white papers for some microsystems. So, it's just a question of maturity.
Yep. Okay, well, we're coming to the end here. We're actually over time a little bit because we're chit-chatting maybe. But Ramses, if you have any last thoughts, maybe a minute or two, and then we'll go to Steve and we will. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Any last thoughts?
To anyone out there, when your system works, it works. It's not a question of leaving angry. It's a question of sometimes there's a new feature, there's a new service, there's a new requirement that you have that is not being met. If that's the case, there's a solution out there to move you faster from one solution to another.
Yeah.
Steve, last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's been great. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I'd probably do this even if we weren't streaming it. So if you want to set up a regular meeting, Mike, let's get a call going. And invite a bunch of all of our contacts. It'd be a blast just to talk like this again. But I
Yeah,
think,
it's nice to get to visit.
it
Definitely.
is. It is. And it's not just at Identiverse or wherever we bump into each other at the conferences, but I will say, look, I'll go back to the old saw, right? Every identity project is a migration, and we've finally kind of come up with a model that we think can scale, not only in terms of like size of the platform, but also scale to different platforms. And we didn't talk about it, but one of the things we're doing is we're actually helping Ping migrate customers from version 1 of their cloud to version 2 of their cloud. So there's even some intra-vendor motions, like we're talking to a lot of old ForgeRock customers who want to go from ForgeRock. Maybe they have a small deployment of ForgeRock and they want to go into Ping in the cloud, or they want to go to the ForgeRock, the legacy ForgeRock cloud, or which is now Ping One Advanced Identity Cloud. So if they want to move even intra product line, we can even help do that. So we're working very hard to extend this product and this almost this technique more and more. So stay tuned. We're doing some cool things. There's some other stuff we're working on that I think will be very exciting. Sort of proxying SAML and OIDC, so that customers never have to worry about reconfiguring an SP or an IDP configuration ever again. So that's something else. We'll just whet your appetite there. But very happy to be on, Mike. Thanks for suggesting it. It's been a great time. And again, I'll do it anytime you want to do it. Just call us. We'll be happy to come on again.
Okay, well, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you, audience. I want to ask everybody to hit follow on the Identity Office Hours LinkedIn page. We get special privileges when we get to 1,000 followers. We're around 650 or so, I think. And yeah, thanks, guys, and thanks, audience. And please tune in next week. We have another great episode planned. And so that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.